How do I get these things up on Instagram or something? So you got your first roll of film developed at home. You have your negatives dried properly. You're putting the light up to them. You're checking out your images. But then it hits you. How do I get these things up on Instagram or something? Well, you're going to have to scan them. But let's start with storage. My storage is a regular old binder, but it has plastic sleeves inside that fit your negatives. And I have some for 35mm and for medium format film. I like to measure the film out to the size of the sleeve and then just cut. Now there are more delicate ways of handling your film. I'm a little rough with it if I'm gonna be honest. Some people wear gloves, but I'm not exactly wearing white gloves all the time to handle these, unless they were like a really good photo shoot that I did. But these are all just my street photography, and I think it adds a little bit of something to the process. Now I have 3 ways that I've digitized my film at home. Depending on the way that I choose to use for the day will really make the difference on whether I cut my film before scanning or cut my film after scanning. Let me show you one where I cut before.
All right, this one is like the most tedious way that I have to do it, but it has given me some pretty good results in the past.
This is my very old scanner. It's the CanoScan 8600F, and it's kind of broken. That is actually the back of the scanner for when you're scanning documents. That part's broken now, and if you noticed, I had a little piece of tape on top. But we, in reality, don't even need that part. I take that off, and behind it is another Lightbox to scan your film, and what it does is it scans in reverse, so there's a light coming down into the Flatbed Scanner instead of out of the Flatbed Scanner, and your film is held in these. One of my favorite features was that this had the option for medium format scanning, which is the main reason why I had this around for so long. We're going to be using 35mm today, and we'll see what kind of quality we get from it.
All right, first, you just gotta load up your negatives. You just slide them in and clamp it down. Clamp it down there. Close your flatbed, and then you're ready to use the actual program to do it.
The program I'm using is called ViewScan, and it's made to be used with out-of-date scanners and printers that don't have drivers anymore. What I like about this program is that you can preview your film after setting up your preferences. So I set it on transparency, left everything else on auto, and let this film just run through. The scanning process can take a little bit of time, so I'm just speeding it up here for you guys to see.
And there it is. Those are our photos. If you check it out here, here's the photo that I did want to compare to all the other ones. So let's see that cropped area. And it has, yes, it has a watermark, but look at the quality of the photo itself. It's not that great. I think maybe the scanner is just very old. I'm not really impressed with the quality. Officially, after filming this is retired. Went out, well, it was at the bottom.
Joking aside, I knew that this can get better quality than this. I've had better quality than this in the past. So I decided to mess with some of the settings and increase the size of the image. After the next preview, I noticed a little bit of improvement on quality, but there was still a lot of grain and a lot of noise, but digital noise, not like the good grain and noise that we want from film. This was all from the scanner. And I found that there was a big difference between preview and scan. So I proceeded with the scan, and the image came out way better, especially with my modified settings. One drawback is the time. It does take a lot of time to scan, but the quality was improved. This is going to be our reference image. Now we have the watermark, which I'm going to remove in Photoshop just for comparison purposes, but I did bring the image into Photoshop, played around with the color a little bit in Camera Raw, and after I found the settings that I was happy with, I removed the watermark just for comparisons, and this is what I came up with. It took a lot of manipulation. The scanning was a little bit slow. The editing was a little bit slow. But in the end, I think this thing still has some life in it. I was so ready to get rid of it, but it's my only resource for medium format, and it's not that bad. So I'll keep it around for a little longer. But I do have another method, and that is taking a photo of your negatives on a Lightbox. This is a cut your negatives before you scan method, and what I like about it is you can just take out your whole sleeve, drop it right on top of the Lightbox, and make a contact sheet. And a cool side note is if you don't happen to have a Lightbox, you can use any illuminated white background. Here I am on my monitor. Another cool thing is if I'm adjusting these negatives through curves, the settings for photo and video would be similar. So for instance, let's take away all the color from this image. We're going to slide our saturation down, and now we're going to reverse our curves to reverse the polarity. So we're turning that negative into a negative, so it's positive. Now we're just kind of playing with stuff, but this is what it comes out to. This is a black and white version of our photos. I think that's pretty cool. And what we do for shooting a photo on our phone or a camera is going to be exactly the same as that. Except if you want to mess with color, you're going to be messing with color. So let's shoot a photo, and then we're going to try to adjust that in Lightroom.
I will have to keep it dark in here, so it's time to close these up. And now we got our light board. So let's shoot a photo, straight down, bam. So we're open in Lightroom now. Let's find our light curve, and this is, we're gonna make negative, so we're gonna put the opposite down and up. It's just kind of blue a little bit. Now we gotta go to our color. We're gonna warm it up a little bit. Oh, it's doing the opposite here, so we gotta go to the opposite. We're cooling it off to warm it up. Let's zoom into something. Here's the one that we wanted to see to compare, and that's the edge of the car. All right, so this is what we're getting out of this.
So the curve method is not the only method of editing negatives into positives. I also like to import my photos into Photoshop and press Control-I. That inverts your image, and that is my new starting point, which I then like to carry into Camera Raw and make my actual adjustments. The images are not that bad, and for a stylized reason, I think that they work great. But we do have to remember the crop factor. If we decide to punch into one of these images, it's going to be a super low resolution. I can technically use a different camera and get better results. So I did, and here's the results I got. On the left is the iPhone, on the right is my 42 megapixel Sony, and the Sony really shined here with dynamic range. They both still needed some tinkering in Photoshop, but no matter how you slice it, these are still cropped images. If you don't want that crop factor, the next method, in my opinion, is the best one I have at home. It's the only process I use where I cut the film after I scan the film, which is one of my favorite parts of this method. This is the Wolverine negative scanner. It supports a few different types of film and shoots out a 20 megapixel photo. It does a great job, and it does it very quickly. It's powered by USB power. You can plug it into a wall. Occasionally I plug it into a power bank, and it also uses an SD card in the back to save your digitized negatives to. It comes with guides to feed your negatives through, and today I'm going to be using the 35mm guide, which is my go-to one. I don't really use any other ones. All you gotta do is fit the guide into the side. Once it clicks, you're able to start feeding your film through. The rest of the process with this little machine is pretty user-friendly. You just turn it on, start feeding your film in, then you select the film type that you're going to use. This says 135 is what you use for the 35mm film, and you could see it just swiping through. I think this is one of the coolest features of this scanner. It's almost like you're watching a slideshow, because you kind of are, but let's get to our comparison photo to compare all of the images. It gives you the options of adjusting the color, but I think out of the box, the color's pretty good, so I'm just going to save it. Now it's saved on the SD card. We can scan any other photos that quickly and then cut up our film and put it away. These are the results that we got. I think out of all the methods that I use, this one was the easiest, the most accurate with color, and with the least amount of manipulation in post. My only gripe with this one is the low end. The shadows get pretty muddy to the point where you lose a little bit of detail. I think the possibility of improving the quality is there. I might just have to jump into some settings and play with them a little bit. Now I use all of these methods for different reasons, but this one is my favorite for the ease of use and color. Now, the Flatbed Scanner is a little slow, but it still works. It still does a pretty good job with dynamics, so the shadows still pop up, and I think this would shine just mainly in black and white or medium format film. And the last one was the Lightbox. Now, the Lightbox is great for highly stylized stuff or creating contact sheets, and I think it's the most accessible of options, but for an individual photo, I would not be using this method, and that's mainly because of the crop factor. So all of these are just at-home methods of scanning your film. They're not the most professional or accurate way, but they definitely get the job done. Which one do you think looks best? You can easily take your film to a lab and get it processed and scanned, but I really like the idea of being hands-on with my film, from the beginning to the end, from the time I load it in my camera to the time I make the scans. I enjoy the whole process. But for you guys out there who have already been doing this at home, what do you guys use? I'm kind of curious. This has been my go-to method for a little while, and I think I might be ready for an upgrade soon. Thank you guys for watching my film series. I really have a lot of fun making these, and I have some surprises coming up for the next ones. If you found this video helpful, please drop a like and a subscribe. I'm going to have some more coming out for you soon. But until then, I'll catch you guys next time.